Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Cultural Communication Confidence with me, Victoria Reynoldson. And I'm really excited to have a guest join us on the show this week. We have Julia Bend. Julia, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's brilliant to have you here because when I met you and you talked about your story, about how you help people, I knew you were somebody I wanted to have on the show, talk to, and share your experiences and strategies. But first of all, why don't you introduce yourself, tell people a bit more about who you are and what you do and how you help people.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Julia Bend, and I am an executive career transition coach. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but that's what I specialize in. I spent a number of years, nearly 3 decades, within the corporate, and decided to take the brave step and step away. There were changes happening in the organization, and I then thought to myself, well, that's probably a decision, a time for me to then, step away and do something different. I always wanted to do something different, but I just didn't know what it was, and I suppose that was what the spearhead was. So I did. I retrained. Coaching was something that I felt that I could add value to, and I had a lot of experience, talking to people, and also it's my journey that I can actually share as well. So I retrained, and then I decided to, start my own practice where I help people that were actually in that state as well. So I've got a signature spear program that I take people through, and that's where I am now.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for introducing yourself and telling us a bit more about, the transition, the move. But I am quite interested in this
Mm.
story because, there is a lot of change going on right now around the world.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting people, you're meeting people who are facing those significant changes in the workplace, either for themselves personally or for their teams. So whether those are restructures, reorganizations, redundancy, losing jobs. And there's obviously a lot of this happening right now across sectors, across industries. And I know your story and your experience of this led you to this work. So can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how it's kind of influenced the work you do today?
I think it's fair to say that change always has to happen. Change will take place and change has to happen to enable people to grow. And that includes organizations. And organizations do have a responsibility to keep the organizations, their organization solvent. And, and sometimes with that change, there are changes to the way people work, and what they actually do. And in my experience, that was what was happening within the organization that I worked in. Changes needed to happen. And I was a victim of that change. And I think it is fair to say on the back foot now that it isn't personal. The company is there to do what the company does. And it's our responsibility then to then see where we fit in if we do and if we don't. It feels personal. That's the key, but it actually isn't. But it is very, very difficult not to think that it actually is personal. So for me, that's what happened, and I did take it personally, but at the same time, I decided, okay, this was the opportunity I had to do something different. Um, and it was a bold decision because 3 decades within a company, you become institutionalized to that company. And you've worked honestly, you've worked really hard, you've done everything, you've delivered to the best that you can. But at the same time, if it's no longer for you and things are changing, then it is an opportunity that I took to do something different. Now, I wouldn't I wouldn't advise. I left without a plan. I didn't have a plan, and it's a lot easier to leave with a plan. But that said, I did. And I took some time to think about what it is that I want to do and took some time to think about what my skills were and what my transferable skills were and where best that I could apply them to to add value to whatever it is that I did. And that's where I came into coaching. I hadn't thought about coaching because I was in IT, so I was in something completely different. I was within a transport organization and I worked in IT, so I didn't actually even have that training HR background that generally people have that move into coaching. That said, I do have the ability to resonate with people. I care about people and I want to support people's journey. And when I came out of the organization, I didn't know where to go to get that for myself. So it took a while for me to then think about what it is that I wanted to do. And when I say a while, I gave myself about 6 to 8 months. And then I decided that, I attended some webinars and then decided, okay, this is something that I could actually do. And I've got experience in because of my experience that I brought from corporate. So it wasn't all bad. Corporate is not bad. You do have to sit back and think about what your skill set is because it's there to enable you to grow as well. So I did that. I did the 18-month accreditation and then felt that I was best placed for me to support others in the journey of change.
Wow, there's so much in there I want to ask you about. But first of all, I think that, the listeners who'll be watching this or listening to this, many of them will be experiencing something similar right now. And you said something very interesting to me, which is it was hard not to take it personally. It wasn't, it was a business decision, but it's hard not to feel like it's actually, despite everything you've given, the loyalty you've given, it's personal. So I just want to acknowledge that because I know myself, having gone through that situation, it does feel like that, right? And I'm
Mhm.
sure there are listeners who are experiencing that right now. Now, the bit of this that I'm really curious about, because you talked about how you managed yourself through this, and you talked about actually you didn't have a plan. For you, it actually was important to have the pause to think and reflect and work out going forward. But you also talked about maybe in some circumstances it might be better to have the plan before you leave. So what is the right way to manage yourself through this situation for people experiencing this? Do you normally suggest that they get set up before they start and leave whatever they're leaving, or is it that you need sometimes a bit of a break to move forward?
So how I approach this with my clients, you see, it's two form. So when people have got that, if I, that little niggling voice that they'd like to do something different, or they're feeling that within the role that they're doing, it's the same, or they're not motivated to, for the new initiatives that companies are trying to put in place, or they feel that they something doesn't feel right, understand or pay attention to how you feel when you wake up in the morning and you go into the office or you go into approach your work. Does it feel like Groundhog Day? And sometimes that there is that niggling voice. I'd like to do something different, but I don't know what there is. So, when I've got clients will come to me from that angle, and clients will come to me a bit like myself, whereby, all of a sudden, this reorganization happens and you don't have time to sit back and reflect and plan. Because I didn't have time to, and I didn't know how to actually. Even if somebody had opened that, it wouldn't have occurred to me to do that. But in any event, I feel that you need to think and take a step back and just give yourself that time to pause for
Mm,
thought. So if you're in an organization at the moment and you're feeling that, things are changing and you're not really sure how it's going to change, or you're thinking to yourself, I actually want something to do, then this is the time to sit there and try and plan, or try at least, get a piece of paper, get a journal and think, what are my skills, or what are my skills that I'd like to take forward, or what is it that makes Julia bend ink?
mm,
Right, that is the thing, because at the end of the day, even if you're part of an organization, you're part of an organization, you're not the organization.
mm,
Okay, so what is it that Julia Inc. is all about? If someone will start to, because when I came out of corporate, and you realize that, well, nobody's actually going to ask where I am today if I don't turn up. If I don't log in, I can log in, or I don't need to log in. Nobody is going to ask because you're no longer part of that organization. But what you want people to do is, where's Julia now? And that's the thing. So when you sit down and you then start to think about what makes me me in terms of my skills, and and what was it I would like to do that I'm not doing now, and and where can I take the next journey, start thinking about that now.
So that makes a lot of sense, like getting really clear on who you are and where you're going, the goal. But I can imagine that there are some people who just really struggle with those questions, have not had the time to think about it, or are still very, very busy in the role and don't have the space. So how do you help people do that? I think you mentioned to me when we were, off air earlier, you were talking about this spear approach that you have. Is that part of it, helping people think about, the way to move forward?
Yes, it does. The thing is that, when I do have my clients come forward to talk to me about to talk to me about the way they're feeling at the moment, that's the start of their commitment that they want to do something for themselves. And what we do as part of the SPEAR program, the S SPEAR stands for, self, purpose, exploration, action, and review. And the self element of that is all about you. It's all about your time. It's all about the balance that you need. It's all about your positioning. It's all about who you are. And time, giving yourself that space and time, it doesn't we will cultivate what that space and time looks like for you. And if it's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, 2 or 3 hours, we work out what that time is for you, because it's that time that is what's going to serve you, and that is important. So by the time you actually come to me, you're already in that mindset that something is going to change. But for those that don't come to me and they're thinking right now, I would also say time is important. And I know you're very busy, right? I know that, because life is busy one way or another, but you owe it to yourself, right, to commit to yourself in that way.
Mm,
And
excellent. So
you can find that time. I promise you, you will find that time, even if it's 10 minutes.
I understand. And I think it's really interesting that, because often people feel like they've got to put aside like a half day or a
No,
full
yeah,
day, but
yeah.
that's just often impossible in the busy
Yeah.
schedules of people that we both work with. So
Mm.
just remind us that. So SPEAR, so self, purpose.
Self-awareness, purpose,
Yeah.
exploration,
Yeah.
action,
Yeah.
and review.
Excellent. So the self-awareness is a starting point. Absolutely. Purpose. Tell us a bit more about that. What does that mean for you in this context?
In this context, purpose is, why do you do what you do? So after you've understood who you are, and
Hmm.
we go through various stages of that, okay, then what is it? Why then, Julia, are you a coach? What does that look like? Okay. We talk about how you utilize your character strengths and your values, right, to create your purpose. So
Hmm.
your purpose for being here,
Hmm.
your purpose for, like I said, doing what you do. We then create a purpose statement from that, right? So what purpose is you've understood you, and now you're understanding why you want to do what you do, or you understand why you're not happy in doing what you're doing anymore. You understand in your motivation. And once you create that purpose, then we move on to the exploration. So now you've got who you really are, why you want to do what you do, or why you are feeling, out of sorts now. And then what's next? Let's explore the possibilities of how you can go about your motivation and doing what it is that you want, that is aligned to, in this career, in this instance, it's about the career transition. So it's aligning your career to keep that motivation going for yourself.
Interesting. And then the A was action, did you say? So we're putting it into action, making
And
things
we create
happen.
an action plan. So we're going to
Okay.
be putting it into action. We create an action plan. So how is this going to? And again, this is part of the planning. So if we are afforded the time, right,
Mm,
then this is the time frame that you would actually put into your action plan. So it could be like myself, that if I was going through this, that all of a sudden I've decided, not all of a sudden, because I've gone through the details of what it is I want to do. Then you then think to yourself, okay, well, I'd really like to be a coach. So what does that mean? Do I read a book? Do I do a course? What type of course do I do? Who is it that I think I want to serve? Where am I best placed, right, with my experience, to then support other people? And it's from that you would then put together your action plan. Okay, I've got research that I need to do. There's people that I need to speak to, and there's a course that I can do. And how long would the course be? And have I got the funding for that? So how will that work, right? And you will find that in your action plan, you probably would then, like in my instance, it took me 18 months to go through the accreditation. So then what are you going to be doing within that time? Yeah, that goes down on your action plan because it could be that you're still working.
Yeah.
It could be we go through this process and you are best placed where you are, right? You don't have to move. You're not having to, get a new job or anything. You are best placed for now.
Mm. Interesting. So actually, the answer isn't always a dramatic
No,
change, or exiting corporate, moving into a business, for example. And
no.
then, of course, review. I can understand the importance of that, like how important review is. And I love that. I love that approach. I think that's a brilliant framework. That's your framework, is it,
That's
in
my
terms of
framework. The review
amazing?
element, I needed an R for the end
Yes.
for the spear. But with all due respect, we review at every stage before we move on to the next stage because
Mm,
you need to be 100% comfortable and bought into this is you. Okay.
yeah.
So therefore, we do actually review it at every stage anyway. But then we have got a pillar at the end where we bring it all together. But
Got
essentially,
it.
nothing will be that much of a surprise because you've gone through this journey.
I love that. And I'm really sort of interested, when you're working with people with this, where do they usually or where do they tend to get stuck? Is there a stage where people, can kind of go through the early stages, but then they get really challenged with this process?
At the beginning, the self. Because, we often, because we're so busy, right? A lot of the time we're busy. We're either very busy or we're part of an organization. Okay. So either way, our identity is not our own. I find. So then when we're sitting down and we're trying to talk, okay, what are your non-negotiables? What is it you truly enjoy doing? How do people perceive you? You always get this pause. And then, how do you work through that? Because what we do is that we don't just we talk about it, but then I want you then to go away and recognize how your behaviors on a day-to-day basis, your behaviors when you come up against challenges, when you really understand what your values are, when you really understand what your character strengths are, then how does that play out? And we come back and we talk about that because invariably we then understand why, we sometimes feel, disillusioned. We sometimes feel irritable, restless. Things could have gone better. We could have positioned things better. So really, the biggest element and the biggest change comes at the very beginning.
That's fascinating. And I can imagine that actually, because also it's about kicking off a new process, a new way of seeing yourself, which is obviously the beginning part of this. And I heard you mention a couple of times about character strengths. Can you just, again, I think I'm familiar with it, but maybe some of the listeners aren't. So could you just tell us a bit more about character strengths?
Character strengths, we all have them. They're, it's a scientific psychologists, came up with this, and we've got 23, 24 character strengths, but we do have five or six signature ones that we don't recognize in ourselves. We think we do, but when these are ones where you don't recognize them as being a strength of yours, but actually they really are. But also, so I mean, and these can talk from, we talk about perception, we talk about spirituality, we talk about honesty, we talk about also there is, I can't, bravery is a favorite one of mine, and perspective is a favorite one of mine as well. And there's a lot, there's 23 of them, but we have five of them that are our character strengths that we then, if we blend it with our values, what our values are, what it truly means to us, that then gives us a very, very strong starting point. So character strengths also, we borrow them. We have them. I mean, bravery and boldness isn't one of mine. But yet there are times when you need to be brave. I spoke on stage earlier this year, right?
Yes.
And that I needed to bring a certain amount of bravery for that time. So we do borrow all the other strengths given the situation that we're actually in. But it is very beneficial to know that we all have them and they're there and and then we have signature ones that we probably are not always aware of.
Yeah, I love that. That's really, really interesting, isn't it? That we think we know what we're strong in, but actually, this is a great way to actually identify those ones.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And, I'm conscious that we're recording this towards the end of the year, as we're turning towards the new year. And it is a time when people start to say things like, right, next year is a year I'm going to get a new job, or I'm not happy, I'm going to change this. Or maybe things are out of control and they are in situations where they're facing the redundancy, restructures, and so on. What advice would you give to those people who are listening, who are facing either changes they know they need to make or changes that are being forced on them, perhaps in their perception, are changes that are out of their control? What would you be saying to them right now?
Well, one thing I would say is, and here I'm going to use the character strength, be brave and be honest. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be this time next year? I know we always ask that question. We really do. Where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Where do you want to be in 2 years' time? But ask yourself, you don't even have to ask yourself, this time next year. Be brave and be honest with yourself. Where do you want to be? I'm feeling vulnerable right now because there are changes happening around me that I am not in control of. You can be in control of, you're only in control of yourself anyway. So let's just sit down and think about you. Right? This is the time to think about you and where you want to be and where you want to go. So be honest with yourself. Do you want to, be a millionaire by next year? Will that happen? No. Right? Be honest. But if I want to be a millionaire, what do I need to do in order to get there? So for me, I'm saying, okay, if you're thinking that you're feeling a little bit vulnerable with that, sit down. You really sit down, find that 10 minutes over the next week, every day, and then ask yourself, what do I truly want?
Wow. I like that yours very practical suggestion of just make the time and make the brain space for it. Because something I notice is sometimes people talk about it without actually doing the sitting down and thinking piece of this, creating the space. So I think that's really very, very practical. So thank you. And I suppose as we come towards the end of the year, the change in the season, hopefully there will be time for people to do this, to really think about these questions. And
I think
you
people
know,
allow themselves at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year. They feel that it is that time, New Year's resolutions and all that. We all so utilize that. It's not just about, oh, let's start going to the gym and then you don't have to do it at the beginning of the year, but because people find it very difficult to do that, but it's acceptable to do it at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year, then really lean into it. But ask yourself, not that I just like to go to the gym. Ask yourself, well, why do I want to go to the gym?
yeah, absolutely.
How would the gym benefit me? Right.
Mm,
And that's when I talk about being honest with yourself. It's not just being honest with yourself about what you want. How is it going to benefit me going to the gym, opposed
yeah.
to just going for a walk or doing something else creative?
So really identifying the motivation to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And for those people who are maybe finding this tough, like maybe again, this is something that they haven't chosen as a path or they're feeling sort of forced down a particular way. What's the type of things that you recommend that they do to kind of manage themselves well, to be more resilient? Because it is tough experiencing change, whether it's something you choose or whether it's something that you're sort of receiving. And it can be hard, the emotions that go with that, and to find your way to keep stepping forward. So, do you have any particular sort of strategies or tips that you have to help, the people you help, but that might be useful for the people who are listening?
I'd like to say for the people that I help, you can reach out to people like us. You know,
Mhm.
often I mean, because it might be an idea of sometimes when you say these things out loud to somebody who is non-judgmental and they're just here, they just, are listening to then support you. There are, I'm not the only coach, but there's obviously myself, but there are a lot of people that offer, free consultations, half an hour, but saying things out loud sometimes can focus the mind as well. And it is usually a comfortable space. But I just think it is very, very acknowledge it's very difficult for yourself, but acknowledge that you are important enough and you can reach out to somebody to just bounce ideas off of, as well as,
Yeah.
taking the time to sit down and journal. It might not be you. I appreciate that, but there are people out there that can support your initial thoughts.
Fantastic. So
I think it's
support is critical, getting the right support for you.
getting the right
Excellent.
support is critical, absolutely
Yeah.
critical. And I mean, and I would say as well, because for me, I just didn't know that it was out there because of where I was, but it actually is out there. And it's because I stopped and I thought about it, and then I started to, look out at the social media. There is so much out there, but critically, if, reading is one thing, but if I reached out to people, other coaches maybe, or if you've got a coalition of support people that you can actually talk to, that is also very key. And that is really, really helpful, which is why I'm where I am.
Fantastic. That's great. Now, as we're coming towards the end of the podcast, I'm really interested to get your perspective on something you've learned recently about leadership, communication, or culture, the themes of this podcast. Would you like to share something that you've kind of reflected on recently to do with one of those themes?
Um, I like culture. I really like them, talking to different people from different parts of the world, different with different backgrounds, different industries, to get their perspective on different things. Because you can learn so much when you talk to people in different people. And I found how it is very, very grounding as well. And it's a little bit like recently, again, like I mentioned to you at the top of the when we first started, that organizations make changes, but it's not personal. And in talking to some of the CEOs that I've spoken to recently, told me just that. And, that was like a moment for me because I knew that, well, it was personal to all of us. But actually, when you sit and think about it, it wasn't. And, if you're not talking to different people, you won't get that different perspective. And that different perspective is what I love when I talk about across cultures and industries, that I can also share in my dealings with other people as well.
That's fabulous. I love that. And absolutely agree. It's what also fuels my energy and curiosity in the work that I do. I just, people, understanding what makes people tick, what drives their motivations, their behaviors, the way that they communicate with each other. That's always been what I love as well. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for
And I can hear the
sharing.
passion, you see. That's another thing. You see, you can hear, but you can. And I love that as well, because I might not be in an industry like other people, but the fact that they're really passionate about where they are, their own culture, what they're doing, it fuels me. And then you get more curious and you want to know more. And, we've spoken in the past, but I can absolutely hear it in the way that you actually explain things, talk about things. You can hear it. And I think that I love it. I love that.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I love your energy as well. And, my sort of very final question is really just asking what's next for you? And if there's anything else you'd like to share with the listeners today about how they might be able to be in touch, learn more about what you do.
Well, I'd like to get in. I think what's next for me is that I'm going to do a more deeper client work. Obviously, I also do run a podcast. I co-host a podcast with Valerie Merrill, and that really, really helps fuel to get your message out there for everybody to learn. And you've got a platform there that people can listen and learn and take what they need from that. So that we're going to be doing more of that. For me, I'd like to deepen my client work and be a bit more and create a team program as well. Um, and I have been thinking about a book.
Fantastic.
I can't promise
Wow.
the book is next year, but I've got my little journal and I'm starting to write little things in there of what I can learn and what I can share that I think will be beneficial to others.
Okay, you heard it here first. Watch out for the book from Julia Bend. Excellent. Looking forward to it. Well, Julia, thank you so much for joining me here today. I've loved this conversation. I love the way that you have shared your own story. You've shared insights about how you help people, the strategies that work. And, that's been incredibly helpful to also have those very practical ideas and tips for
Mm.
listeners to take away, who many of whom I'm sure are also facing situations where change is happening right now, whether they want that change or whether that's kind of being thrust upon them. So thank you so much for joining me here.
You're very welcome. And it is also important to say that you're not alone. There's
Yes,
either somebody that's either been through it that can support you, or there's somebody else that's going through it currently. But the journey is there, and it is only a journey. It will pass with the support, definitely.
excellent. I think that's a brilliant ending to this podcast. Thank you, Julia.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you,
Thank you for having
everybody.
me.
Excellent. And thank you for listening, everybody. And look forward to seeing you next time.